We are back on Morning Line, our final segment with Dr. Richard Tarpey. He's with us, professor from MTSU. This is a part that's interesting, I think, maybe for all of you to listen into in terms of what kind of jobs are available and what they pay right now in a marketplace where now is a good time to be looking for a job, any type of job, really. And especially if you're a college graduate, the professor says, you've got, job fairs coming. I know you have a special realm where you have different employers contact you. But, I know a lot of people say, I want to go into engineering. Why? Well, I don't really like engineering, but I know I can graduate and get a job starting at 50 grand right off the bat. Engineering, and that's a tough field to go into. I mean, you got to be a smart person. But there's a lot of, not just like necessarily low-paying service industry jobs. You're saying there's all kinds of jobs out there.
Right. Well, and depending on what industry you're talking about. So supply chain specific, where our graduates go out and become some sort of analyst within the supply chain.
Okay.
Not necessarily in the warehouse stocking goods or order picking, but coming out with a supply chain degree and going into an analyst type job, a buyer, a purchaser, entry level. The average starting salary in the Middle Tennessee area is $50,000 to $60,000 a year for entry level.
Starting.
And moving up quickly. So I have one example of a student who got an internship, worked his internship. They offered him a full-time job. This was back in, I guess he's been out for a year. He's now been offered a manager job, right? So he's worked hard. He's done the work. He's made a name for himself at that company just by working hard. And there's openings. Dollar General, Tractor Supply, a lot of little manufacturing companies that a lot of people don't know about out there are looking for people to do these type of jobs, and they pay very well for a starting salary.
And truck drivers.
Truck drivers.
I mean, there's some truck driving schools, and a tractor trailer. Now that may not be for everyone. I've often thought that wouldn't be a bad gig. Being on a tractor trailer, hauling across country, and you're seeing the country and driving the truck. And I don't mean to minimize it. I know it's hard work, but they don't have enough truck drivers, right?
No, not at all. Not at all.
I'm thinking about that. I mean, and that it could be a gig you'd enjoy. And I bet they pay pretty well right off the bat.
I imagine they do. I don't know much about truck driver pay. I see the ads.
Yeah.
A lot depends on whether you own your truck, you lease your truck, and all those type of things. But I haven't seen anything about truck driver pay being terribly low. Okay,
well, right. And would you then, your advice to your students when they say this is, the marketplace is such, you don't have to jump at the first job offer, or sometimes in the old days when it was super competitive, when I was getting in the field, it's kind of like that first job, if it wasn't quite right, you still kind of wanted to take it because you didn't know if another one would be coming your way.
Sure.
But you would say in this marketplace right now, unless you have the perfect offer, if you're not completely sold, wait a moment and you can shop around.
Within reason, yeah. Depending on what your timeline is. And I work with students to look at where you're graduating. Are you working now? What's your timeline where you have to have a job?
Yeah.
Right. So if I have no job and I'm graduating in May, right now you should be looking for a job. When it comes to June, you don't have a job, you might have to take a job. What I advise students to look at is, what company do you want to work at? Don't just take a job.
Yeah. Target.
Target a company that you want to be at. Get into that company. You may take a job you don't like. Right? So I took a job at HCA. My initial job was not necessarily the job I wanted, but I wanted to get to HCA years ago. Once you get into a company, the opportunity to go where you want in that company will exist.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a big company, even small companies. So you got to start, get your foot in the door.
Yeah, that's one thing I wonder if the people don't want to do. I mean, there's something called paying your dues. I mean, for the really good plum jobs, you're not going to go straight into that. I get people asking me all the time with the gig I have. I get to meet interesting people like you and do this. I didn't walk right into doing this right up. I was working overnights. I worked weekends as a reporter and all this. I enjoyed it. I loved that too. But I mean, that's called paying my dues. And after a period of time, everyone wants to just graduate in this business. Go, I want to be an anchor right off the bat. Or I want to, I mean, but maybe you can hold out for a little bit better now. But still, if you really target a good company and it's popular, maybe pay your dues.
You have to. And I think the biggest fallacy I see with students that get a management degree from MTSU, they think they're going to go out and be a manager the day after they graduate. You're not going to go out and be a manager. Maybe you can go out and be a manager at a small restaurant or perhaps a small department store, but you're not going to come out and be a vice president. And a lot of students now think that's the way it works. It doesn't work that way. At United Airlines, I started out loading bags on airplanes at O'Hare Airport, for heaven's sake. You have to start somewhere, and I think that's a concept that's been lost these days. And a lot of that's just people see success through the media.
I know.
There's instant success, and we have people that come out of major universities that walk into jobs that are leadership jobs. Well, chances are they're related to somebody, right? And that's how they got that leadership job. And that happens in Nashville too. It happened at HCA as well. You know, when you come from a family of who's a CEO of some company, you're going to come out of Duke or Vanderbilt, and you're going to go get a really good job. The majority of us aren't like that.
Right.
Majority of us have to get into a company and work a job and then start targeting where do I want to go with my career and how do I get there.
Yep. And if you're good at it and you make your life easy for your managers ahead of you because you're really efficient, it's just in this marketplace, you will move super fast.
Absolutely.
Okay, we just 3 minutes left as we wrap things up. Your take then with where we stand in inflation, and maybe you can answer this in just a couple minutes. What's it going to take? Are we going to continue to see that inflation balloon, or where do you think it might slow down? Is it going to be COVID maybe dialing down a bit?
I think COVID is the wild card that nobody can predict.
Okay.
Until we get a handle on COVID from the perspective of people back at work, inflation's going to continue, right? The Federal Reserve's going to raise interest rates in either February or March. They're not going to raise them. You know, what are we at? 0.5%? I don't know what we're at. Ridiculous.
That's low.
So the theory would be I raise interest rates, incentivizes people to save more money and spend less. If I go from 0.5% to 1%, it's not going to do anything. Right. Let's be realistic. It's going to take a long time to do anything. Inflation's going to be here for a while until the supply problems resolve themselves. And there's really no governmental action that can resolve our supply problems right now. We need to somehow get workers back in the supply chain to move the goods, to reduce the backlog, get the ships out in LA and the West Coast unloaded, move them across the country to the stores so that we have enough goods to meet the demand. Once demand and supply begins to equalize, inflation will subside.
That could be a few years.
You know, depending on who you listen to. You listen to economists, you listen to supply chain experts who say probably closer to 2023. No one's going to go out and say 2024 because it'll cause a mass panic. So even if I think it's 2024, people are saying, you know what, it's going to be next year. It's going to be next year. It's going to be next year.
Hey man,
it's going to be a while.
We have to live in this realm and make do as best we can. And there are advantages to it. Like for no other reason right now is a great time to look for another job, or if you're finding your first one. Professor, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
You have class today?
I do.
You do?
This afternoon.
What is it?
Project management this afternoon.
Project management. All right. Well, and I think it's great. You guys have the job fairs out there. MTSU, of course, a great university. A lot of them do. Bring them out there, and you know, you've got spring, this final semester, right? And you'll have a bunch of graduates headed out.
We will.
So that's how it plays out. They're lucky to have you as a professor. Thanks for coming on.
I appreciate that.
We'll talk again, all right?
I look forward to it.
Take a break. Be back with Programming Note about tomorrow right after this. Stay with us.